My advice is call J.G. Wentworth. They helped me, and they made it easy.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth.
Call 866-539-2925. 866-539-2925.
Mars is the kind of challenge that we need. We desperately need.
It is an amazingly complex undertaking.
You don't send robots out to find fossils.
Today's scientists are experimenting with everything from rocket design to how to protect astronauts from cosmic radiation and where to look for alien life. Mars Rising, a special 6-part series, tomorrow at 9.
What started as an ordinary Sunday
December the 7th, like any other morning, Mom making breakfast,
became the day that will live in infamy.
We are a moment of history that changed the course of the world.
Through eyewitness accounts.
We were awakened by a crash landing.
Smoke and flames must have gone 500-600 feet in the air. You darn right I was scared. I mean, it was awesome.
We uncover the secrets of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor Day, Friday beginning at 6 p.m. Only on the Military Channel.
To find out more about why snipers were so effective in Stalingrad, Dan and I went to the British Army's Sniper Training Centre in Wales. I would take on the role of a German commander, and Dan would be part of a Soviet sniper team.
What we have set up here, Peter, is your headquarters, and it would be far enough back from the front line to provide you with some limited protection, but it would be close enough for you to influence the battle.
My headquarters also had radio operators working inside, and a machine gunner to protect me. The task for Dan and his sniper team was to disable the headquarters, either by shooting me or my team.
A sniper's first job is to find a hiding place from where they can fire at the enemy.
So what are you seeing, Dean? Anything suspicious?
Not yet. Keep looking, hopefully. We'll better locate anyone that's out there, any suspicious movement.
It could be anywhere. If there's a sniper in there, it could be anywhere.
Yep.
It would have been extremely difficult in a large city that's been so devastated like Stalingrad to identify a sniper moving around and in position.
We'd managed to get into our building without being spotted, but to stay hidden, we had to change our camouflage to blend in with the new environment, just like the snipers in Stalingrad. Our plan was that rather than attacking the front, we would cover the rear exit from the headquarters.
Piece of rifle. Okay, you can see straight through there. That is a target area. That looks to be like a HQ.
It was now just a question of sitting and waiting, but without losing my concentration.
As I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that one of the real challenges to being a sniper is maintaining that focus, and the guys at Stalingrad would be doing that for a day or even longer, and you just don't know when the target's going to appear, and as a result you've got to be, your nerves are on edge the whole time.
While we kept watch at the back, 2 more snipers, the rest of our team, climbed into position in a small building directly in front of the headquarters.
But if they were in one of these buildings, they'd be using the shadow inside the building to hide themselves, set back from the window, nice and still.
The team at the front were now in position. They decided to attack the machine gunner because he was the most immediate threat.
Okay, enemy on target. Same. Delta. Wait.
If he's a reasonably trained sniper who's well practiced, you would pretty much guarantee a hit with the first round.
Range 225 meters.
You should be able to achieve a shot onto your centre of mass At approximately 900 metres.
900 metres?
900 metres.
Shot from chest ahead.
Send it.
What's that? Delta.
Target down.
We've got to move.
Delta confirm kill.
Inside the building, I thought I would be safe from the snipers.
Right. Well, we know he's out there somewhere.
Confirm 1 kill. Delta is down. All other call signs moved into the building.
With our target inside the building, we decided to use a tactic used by snipers in Stalingrad. We called in artillery fire onto his headquarters to force him out into the open.
Hi, Zero, this is 20 Delta. All call signs in building. Request Alpha 1, 1 Alpha. Fires X-ray 001, 5 now, over.
Now they're shooting at us. Artillery.
Right, I see artillery going in now. So it should push them out to the back.
It would only be a matter of time before we got a direct hit from the mortars onto this location. We've got to move.
Okay.
We decided to move to our vehicle at the back of the building and used smoke to hide ourselves from the snipers at the front.
We now have smoke being thrown, obscuring our view.
Mortar's coming rather close.
Yeah, I can see a Q on his head.
I had a shot. I had a shot in from somewhere over there. Goodness knows where.
I think that might have been Dad.
So that's me done for.
Absolutely.
Here they are. Hi, Dad. I had no idea where you were. No idea at all.
But we could see you.
You sure you hit me?
Absolutely.
I mean, really, it was quite frightening because I had absolutely no idea where you guys were. It just demonstrates how a very small number of people lightly equipped can keep a serious command post in real trouble. Well, really, really quite terrifying it must have been.
Soviet snipers were very effective. The German troops knew that if they broke cover, they risked being shot. German snipers were soon brought into the city as well. And as the fighting raged above the ground, the soldiers were increasingly driven down into a terrifying new arena. Troops on both sides began to fight underground. Soldiers roamed through cellars, tunnels, and even sewers like this one, as they attempted to gain an advantage over the enemy. The German soldiers soon had a new name for this kind of fighting. They called it Rattenkrieg, War of the Rats. It was fighting of an intensity and terror unlike anything the soldiers had experienced before.
On December 11th.
That's gotta be born.
It's the ultimate DVD for your collection. The Bourne Ultimatum, only December 11th.
The brakes were shot, so I went to AutoZone. With their ZNet system, he showed me pictures of the brakes to make sure I got the right parts, and even gave me complete instructions to do the job right. I tell you, the service you get at AutoZone, you can't beat it.
I'm Mr. T, and this is my Night Elf Mohawk.
God, T, there's no such thing as a Night Elf Mohawk.
Shut up, fool! Like I was saying, my Mohawk storms through mighty forests on his frost saber. My Mohawk...
T, it's a warrior, not a Mohawk.
Well, maybe Mr. T hacked the game and created a Mohawk class. Maybe Mr. T's pretty handy with computers. Has that occurred to you, Mr. Condescending Director? I'm Mr. T, and I'm a Night Elf Mohawk. What's your game?
World of Warcraft. Try it for free at warcraft.com.
Rated T for Teen.
That check you get every month from a structured settlement as a result of a lawsuit or from an annuity may not be enough to pay for all the bills that are piling up. If you're having trouble making ends meet, it can feel like you're adrift in a sea of uncertainty. You might think you're sunk, but now there's help. Peachtree can turn your structured settlement or annuity into cash today. Cash you can use to pay off debt, avoid foreclosure, pay bills, get a new house, or buy a new car. Money does grow on trees. Call Peachtree to turn your future payments into immediate cash when you need it most. Wherever you need help, Peachtree is there for you. The money from your structured settlement or annuity is yours. You deserve to have it, and Peachtree can help you get it.
To find out more, call Peachtree today at 1-800-581-8609. That's 1-800-581-8609 or log on to settlementfunding.com.
Life doesn't wait. Why should you?
Did you hear that?
It's our first night in the new house. Do you want me to check?
Okay.
I saw a guy trying to break in.
What?
The alarm. Scared him off.
Hello.
This is Andy from Brinks Home Security. Are you all right?
My husband saw someone try to break in.
I'm sending help right now.
Thank you.
Call 1-888-643-3144 now to blanket your home with protection from Brinks Home Security and install a personalized system for just $99. Inside, Brinks delivers peace of mind to you and your family with state-of-the-art sensors and detectors engineered to help protect and alert. This includes the Brinks Security Keypad, your link to the Brinks 24-hour award-winning monitoring centers that can provide a fast response to both you and the authorities. Call now to get the $99 installation and a second keypad installed free. That's a $135 value. Plus, you could save up to 20% on your homeowner's insurance. Call 1-888-643-3144 now and get the system installed for just $99. Brinks Home Security, dedicated to rapid response and peace of mind 24 hours a day. Call now.
What started as an ordinary Sunday
December the 7th, like any other morning, Mom making breakfast
became the day that will live in infamy.
We are a moment of history that changed the course of the world.
Through eyewitness accounts.
We were awakened by a crash landing. The smoke and flames must have gone 500-600 feet in the air. You darn right I was scared. I mean, it was awesome.
We uncover the secrets of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor Day, Friday beginning at 6 p.m. Only on the Military Channel.
In mid-October, after over a month of fighting, buildings had been reduced to empty shells. Thousands of civilians were inside the city. Some stole food to survive, but many more died of starvation or from drinking polluted water. The fight for Stalingrad had descended into a vicious series of battles over individual buildings, sometimes with the Soviets and the Germans on different floors of the same one. Troops could spend days trapped in a single room. In all the chaos, any sign of a clear front line simply vanished. But despite the tenacious Soviet defense, the Germans were increasing their stranglehold on the city.
The landing stage, where vital Russian supplies were brought across the river Volga, remained under heavy German fire. And fighting continued to rage for control of the city's highest point, Mamayev Kurgan. It had now changed hands several times, without either side establishing control. After 6 weeks of fighting, the German forces had managed to gain control of much of the shattered city. The Soviets only had this narrow strip of land, but somehow they were clinging on. Hitler was becoming increasingly impatient and demanded Paulus launch a decisive blow, this time on Stalingrad's industrial heart, the factories in the north of the city. They were the Soviets' last major refuge. If they lost these, they would have almost nothing left of the city. Their key stronghold was the tractor factory that dominated the entire area.
The factory had been converted to tank production to support the war effort. And despite the battle raging around it, tanks continued to roll out through its gates. But that was soon to end. On October the 14th, the attack on the factories began. Luftwaffe air raids blitzed the entire factory district. Planes flew 3,000 sorties a day, even more than in the original blitz on the city 7 weeks earlier. Supported by 200 tanks, thousands of German infantry began to storm the factory complex. Explosions shattered these enormous windows, sending deadly shards of glass raining down on the troops below. Even by the brutal standards of Stalingrad, it was clear that the fight for the city had reached a new level of ferocity. Soviet commandos tried to defend the factory, but soon the walls were covered with blood. Over half of them were killed or wounded, including their commander. He was buried alive up to his neck in rubble when his command post received a direct hit. He was rescued a few hours later, but he collapsed in shock when he tried to tell General Chuikov what had happened.
With the resistance in the factories crumbling, Chuikov realized that even he would now have to retreat.
The German advance through the factory district forced Chuikov to pull his headquarters back here to the bank of the Volga. He was suffering severe casualties. More than a quarter of all his men had been killed or wounded since the attacks on the factories began. Units which had come to Stalingrad with 7,000 or 8,000 men were now down to a few hundred survivors.
The Soviets were once again staring defeat in the face.
The unrelenting German attacks had forced Chuikov's troops back into a handful of enclaves, only 200 meters, just over 200 yards deep in some places. One up here in the north. Another toehold in the factory area. And the larger area further south. Chuikov had lost 90% of Stalingrad, but still refused to admit defeat.
The battle was well into its third month, and the heat of the summer was a distant memory. Temperatures had plummeted to well below zero. But just as it seemed that things couldn't get any worse for Chuikov's men, the River Volga started to freeze. This made it hard for boats to ferry supplies into the city. The men were cold, hungry, exhausted, and running out of ammunition.
Hitler was now convinced that the city was finally in his grasp. In a speech to party veterans on the 8th of November, he effectively claimed victory.
But the Germans were in for a dreadful shock. Because while Hitler was obsessed with the fighting in the city, Stalin's high command had been planning a bold offensive that would change the course of the whole battle.
On the 19th of November, the Soviets launched one of the most awesome counterattacks in modern history. Field guns, mortars, and rockets began a ferocious bombardment 75 miles to the west of Stalingrad. It was the earth-pounding product of 2 months' secret planning. For 80 minutes, artillery thundered. Then, at 8:40 a.m., they suddenly fell silent.
Later, wave upon wave of Soviet tanks broke out from beneath their camouflage. The key phase of the Soviet battle plan was now underway. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops and thousands of tanks had been hidden in the countryside around Stalingrad, and now they were on the attack. The weather was appalling. Snow and freezing fog made it almost impossible to see where they were going. Infantrymen carrying their rifles ran alongside the tank, and some even hitched a ride. They clung on the back up here as the tank plunged through gullies and banks of snow. These men were leading a great Soviet comeback, thrusting deep into enemy-held territory.
Paulus got the news at his headquarters here. This is it on our map case right here. The German front line ran from down here through Stalingrad in front of Paulus and right the way back to his rear. It was here in the north that the Soviets had mustered a massive force which had broken through behind Paulus. There was even worse news to come. Just 24 hours later, more Soviet tanks broke through the front line in the south and headed north to link up with the others. Soviet forces were closing like huge jaws around Paulus and his entire 6th Army. On the 24th of November, the jaws closed near the town of Kalach. The terrible reality dawned on Paulus. As many as 300,000 men in Stalingrad and the surrounding countryside were trapped in an area that became known as the Kessel, the German word for cauldron. Paulus was stunned. No one had believed the Soviets had the strength to mount such a massive operation. Paulus asked Hitler permission to withdraw from Stalingrad and to punch a hole in the ring of Soviet troops surrounding him. But just like Stalin 4 months earlier, Hitler told his troops there was no question of their being allowed to withdraw from Stalingrad.
Hitler ordered his troops inside the Kessel to continue fighting, while he prepared 2 tank divisions to break through the encirclement from the outside. But it would take weeks for the forces to get into position and ready for the assault. Inside the Kessel, cut off from their supply lines, conditions for the trapped German troops were deteriorating rapidly.
Food, fuel and ammunition were all running out. To make matters worse, many of the German soldiers had never received their winter uniforms. There was little they could do except huddle together in whatever shelter they could find.
He believed he would be able to keep them fighting with the support of an airlift. Flying supplies into airfields in the Kessel was a huge undertaking. There were 300,000 troops trapped around here, and Hitler's staff calculated that it would require 800 cargo planes flying night and day. It was an extraordinarily ambitious plan, but the head of the German Air Force, the bombastic Hermann Göring, convinced Hitler that it would work. To succeed, they would need to land here at airfields in the Kessel an absolute minimum of 300 tons of supplies every single day. But they had made some fatal miscalculations. Within days of the airlift starting, it became clear that Hitler and Göring had massively overestimated the capacity of their air force to supply the 6th Army. A combination of Soviet fighter aircraft and appalling weather meant that on average only 120 tons of supply reached the Kessel each day, less than half of what was required.
Emerging from the shadow of the Army,
We would own the skies in days.
a new power took flight.
We're going to have an Air Force, and we'll have the capability to do any job.
Now, the Military Channel is celebrating 60 years of Air Force might with a special night of Beyond the Wild Blue.
It was a big moment for us. We thought, boy, this is it. Now we're all on our own.
Air Force 60th anniversary, Saturday, December 15th, beginning at 8, only on the Military Channel.
Tomorrow on Weaponology, the Waffen-SS. Originally Hitler's bodyguards. In combat, they were ruthless.
Waffen-SS were extremely loyal, fierce fighters.
Wielding technology years ahead of its time.
This weapon was the way to generate lots and lots of firepower.
And a massive monster of the battlefield.
Tons and tons of metal come storming through a position. People are terrified of them.
The Waffen-SS on Weaponology. Premiering tomorrow at 10 on the Military Channel.
Things you can do with one finger. Amuse a baby. Declare your team's supremacy. Prove your sobriety. Make toast. Identify a murderer. Get to know your doctor. Save Holland. Reallocate your entire investment portfolio with E-Trade and get free independent research. Tell your expensive broker where to go. All it takes is one finger. It's easy, it's extraordinary, it's E-Trade.
If you're looking for some high-performance, incredibly durable, good-looking boots, don't screw around. Go to Lugs.com and check out the entire line of Lugs boots.
And remember, all Lugs boots are designed with the same features as our bikes. High performance, super comfortable, good looking, incredibly durable.
So for the work boots that work, do what I do and go to Lugs.com. Lugs, the work boots that work.
When you open a Samuel Adams lager and begin to pour it out, you get this beautiful amber color, and you put your nose in it, and you get the smell of flowers called hops.
We use noble hops. They are expensive, but it's a better quality ingredient for Boston lager.
Most brewers have a dash of hops.
We use a pound of hops per barrel.
We add some caramel malt to that. Significant full flavor, but everything is there in balance.
The proof is in the taste.
I was pretty nervous, apprehensive.
It was tough to tell them I was joining the Army at first. I did research on my own, tried to get an idea about what the Army was going to be like. It's given me a whole bunch of confidence.
But I'm very proud of him.
He's just a stronger, more driven individual.
He can outrun me.
If your son or daughter wants to talk about joining the Army, listen, you made them strong, we'll make them Army strong. Find out more at GoArmy.com.
From the moment a crime is committed, a race begins.
You only have one shot to get that evidence. You miss it, it's probably gone forever.
Every clue is crucial, every instinct important.
You tied him directly to the crime scene.
Every decision life-changing.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces are there.
Because for those who break the law, time never stops running. Life of a Crime. Thursdays at 8 on the Discovery Times channel.
What do you get at Scottrade besides $7 trades?
I get Dow Jones news for investors, free streaming quotes, and research I can really use.
That's why we're here.
Only Dish Network customers can save up to $800 instantly on the Sharp Aquos HD TV. Choose your screen size and get shipping and a 3-year warranty free. Try getting that anywhere else. Get your HD TV from the best in HD TV, Sharp, and save up to 20% through Dish Network. To complete your HD picture, upgrade to the best sports and movies in HD with Dish HD, free for 6 months. Go to dishnetwork.com/sharp and upgrade to a Sharp HD TV and Dish HD today.
Why are more investors moving all their accounts to Scottrade?
I had accounts all over the place. They made it easy to bring them together.
Scottrade's here for you.
A Special Forces op who escaped capture traveling 8 days through the Iraqi desert. Now he's eluding a Special Ops team trained to capture him.
They're right on to me now.
We have visual. Special Forces Manhunt, Wednesdays at 10 on the Military Channel.
Inside Stalingrad, the fighting continued, and the Soviets unleashed a new kind of assault. Day and night, loudspeakers throughout the Kessel broadcast propaganda messages in German. They called Stalingrad a mass grave and urged German soldiers to surrender. Despite the psychological battering, the frostbite and the starvation, most German troops still refused to surrender. Some feared that they'd be tortured or shot by their Russian captors, but most simply refused to believe that Hitler would abandon them. Then, at long last, a rumor went round that salvation was on the way.
2 German tank divisions, backed up by infantry and aircraft of the Luftwaffe, were on the way towards their colleagues trapped in the Kessel. Leading the attack was one of Hitler's most successful commanders. His name was Field Marshal Erich von Manstein. He had masterminded Germany's whirlwind victory in France, and now he was leading the mission to rescue the Sixth Army. Manstein's tanks had to break through the front line, which was now down here, and then fight their way across the Soviet-controlled territory surrounding the Sixth Army. The German troops surged forwards towards their stranded colleagues, but within days, the Red Army intercepted the German advance 30 miles short of the trapped Sixth Army. The Soviet defenses had formed an impenetrable barrier, and Manstein's rescue attempt could advance no further. But on the 20th of December, the news got even worse. Manstein heard that the Soviets had launched a new offensive way off to the west, which threatened to cut off all the German forces in southern Russia. He had no choice but to veer off to deal with this new threat and abandon his attempt to break through to Paulus. With Manstein's departure went the last hope of the Sixth Army.
Six weeks into the encirclement, Soviet planes dropped thousands of leaflets into the Kessel. They promised the Germans safety, food, and medical attention if their commander conceded defeat. But the message ended with a chilling warning. If surrender was rejected, everyone inside the Kessel would be wiped out.
Once again, Hitler refused to allow his troops to surrender. So on the 10th of January 1943, the Soviets began the final operation to destroy all German troops that remained inside the Kessel.
Frozen, weakened by starvation and exhausted, the Sixth Army was no longer capable of defending itself properly. The only chance of escape was to make it to one of the two airstrips inside the Kessel and try to squeeze onto a plane. This is all that remains of Gumrak airfield, just west of Stalingrad. Everyone knew that each plane leaving here could be the last, and people were crushed in the fight to get aboard. Some desperate men even clung to the wings of taxiing aeroplanes, but as the pilots accelerated, one by one these men tumbled to the ground.
For 2 more weeks, German troops inside the Kessel were pushed relentlessly back. Survivors were chased into the freezing ruins of Stalingrad. Among them was General Paulus. Paulus moved his headquarters to the basement of this shop in the city center. He was now a broken man. But Hitler wanted to portray Paulus and his Sixth Army as martyrs fighting to the death for Germany. And on the 31st of January 1943, Paulus received a message from Hitler promoting him to Field Marshal. No German Field Marshal had ever given himself up alive, and Hitler no doubt expected Paulus to commit suicide. Within hours, Soviet troops had surrounded Paulus. Trapped in his basement, he made his decision. At 7:45 a.m. on the 31st of January, 1943, Paulus chose not to commit suicide, but to surrender himself. Under armed guard, he was taken to a house on the outskirts of the city. 2 days later, after 5 months of horror, the fighting finally ended. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. The whole world had witnessed a catastrophic defeat for Hitler's Nazi empire. And for the Führer himself, it was a personal disaster. He'd been totally committed to victory and was now utterly humiliated. The aura of invincibility that had surrounded Hitler's army for so long was gone forever. In Stalingrad alone, 150,000 German troops had been killed. And 90,000 more were now beginning the long, slow journey to Soviet prison camps. Only 5,000 of them would ever return home. Although his city lay in ruins, Stalin had won. But victory had come at a terrible price. The Soviets lost more men and women during the Stalingrad campaign than Britain and America lost during the entire war. This park is a monument to the defenders of Stalingrad, who ultimately helped change the course of the Second World War. Stalingrad was the battle that marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Over the next 2 years, Stalin chased Hitler's armies all the way back to Berlin. In 1945, the Nazi Empire was finally crushed between Britain, America, and their allies in the West, and Soviet forces in the East. The irony is that Stalin went on to replace one oppressive empire in Eastern Europe with another of his own. And the Soviet Union, which had been the West's ally during the Second World War, became its bitter opponent during the Cold War, which lasted another half-century.
America's future top guns train in the A-4 Skyhawk. Among the first in combat in Vietnam, it flew the most missions and paid the highest price.
We told them, damn it, don't get hit. And then they kept still getting hit. But we couldn't fire them.
Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly present America's 26 newest naval aviators.
Just 2 weeks ago, these student pilots of the Naval Air Station at Meridian, Mississippi, flew their A-4 Skyhawks over the ocean for the first time.
First Lieutenant Cherry Carrick qualified in the A-4 on board USS John F. Kennedy.
They approached an aircraft carrier 100 miles off the coast of Florida.
Lieutenant J.G. Michael C. Crisp, call sign Critter.
Remembered to drop their hooks.
Lieutenant J.G. Bartell was named to the Commodore's list during the advanced
slammed onto the deck at 150 miles an hour. And caught a wire. In the Navy's oldest airplane, they have become the newest members of the elite tailhook fraternity.
It's 90% attitude and 10% ability, by the way.
To each and every one of the new wingies, I wish you all the very best in the days ahead.
It will be at least a year before these men are truly ready to face the test of combat. But but in the plane they fly, the A-4 Skyhawk, and in the tactics they use. They confront every day the history of one of the Navy's longest battles.
In 1966, our country was already becoming embroiled in the conflict in Southeast Asia, in a small country by the name of Vietnam.
We went out to win the war. We fully expected to win the war and get it over with. We didn't drop our bombs and go home. We dropped our bombs and went and looked. We were out there to find some trucks to blow them up. To find the barge and to sink it. That's a boat? That's it. We wanted to get a little hate and discontent in the game.
In 1967, at the height of the air war over North Vietnam, Brian Compton commanded an A-4 attack squadron called the Saints on the USS Oriskany. The attack pilots of the Oriskany saw more action and suffered more combat losses over North Vietnam than any other group in the Navy.
The ball game is a different one once you go into combat. And you've got to use all the instincts you have to become an elusive, sure-footed fighter.
Jim Stockdale is probably best known today for his 1992 debut on the national political stage. In 1965, he was leading the pilots of the Oriskany into combat for the first time.
The ability to improvise and to know that all of that peacetime stuff is out the window. A lot of people give that up very, very hesitantly.
Jim started off, working fairly low to the ground. You can get it so high you can't hardly see Vietnam. As a matter of fact, some of those guys, I think, would have lost the bombs in from the coastline if they could, but, his attitude was to get in there and to hit the target.
On board the Oriskany, under Jim Stockdale's command, 120 pilots and 70 planes, including F-8 Crusaders and A-4 Skyhawks. The plane that flew more bombing missions into North Vietnam than any other naval aircraft.
The A-4 was all business. I mean, you were going to be down there on the ground looking at flak. And that's where I thought I should be. And that's where I was the day I got shot down.
From its base in the Tonkin Gulf, 100 miles off the coast of North Vietnam, the U.S. Navy was trying to cut supplies flowing to communist guerrillas fighting in South Vietnam. For years, North Vietnam had sent weapons, ammunition, and even people to the South in a drive to reunite the two countries. In support of South Vietnam, President Johnson, in 1965, ordered the U.S. Navy and Air Force to begin bombing the North. He called it Operation Rolling Thunder.
I've read since that Rolling Thunder, when it was programmed, was to be something like we saw in Desert Storm. Remember those couple of weeks of dashing air power? But it strung out. It strung out and was just a fancy name for very routine, occasional alpha strikes.
Our mission will be an escort and flak suppression.
In the parlance of Rolling Thunder, Alpha strikes were multi-plane missions against North Vietnam's militarily significant targets.
Things that we should be ever mindful about in this.
In such a rural country, U.S. military leaders in 1965 counted just 94 of these targets.
We'll be proceeding into the target on a heading of 090.
That list became known as the Alpha or A-list. In Operation Rolling Thunder, the decision to strike the A-list targets came from Washington and not from commanders on the ships. Paul Engel was Jem Stockdale's operations officer.
You know, go right by that steel plant, go right by that big production concrete plant, go by all the kinds of facilities that would aid and abet the enemy's success, and bomb the bejeepers out of the outhouse and come home, having gone through all the fire. It was a mess. We frequently had to wait until way up the late hours of the night into the morning hours before we knew what ordnance to put on airplanes, because we didn't know what we were going to be striking. The only exception then was running up and down the roads looking for trucks.
Trucks and trains became the most common targets, while Hanoi and the port of Haiphong, where Soviet war supplies arrived almost daily, remained, for the time being, untouched. In 1965, Washington refused to grant the Navy permission to attack most of the targets on the Alpha list.
So what we were doing was making them mad, but we weren't taking away the wherewithal to fight. That was the sadness of it. And rolling blunder was part of it, you know. Continue, I'm going to hit you a little bit harder if you don't do what I tell you. It's kind of an arrogant approach.
You had a man, Secretary of Defense, he was a smart man. He was so smart he thought he could make 2 and 2 come out 5. That is a very dangerous thing for a smart man to do.
We thought there was a language of deterrence out there, that fighting was really a kind of rough form of communication. We were making gestures with our airplanes. That's quite different than the Vietnamese thinking. We thought they would respond with gestures, but they didn't think of it as a gesture. They wondered what we thought we would accomplish by doing that.
On September 9th, 1965, Jem Stockdale flew his A-4 Skyhawk over a familiar railroad yard in North Vietnam.
I'd been over that the day before and didn't get any flak at all. This day, I heard the darn gun, and I looked down there, and here came these fireballs. It had been brought in the night before, 57 millimeter. That plane was on fire and upside down, and there was no getting away from that. I knew I was the only wing commander to live through an ejection. I remembered the code of conduct, Article 4. If I am senior, I will take command. So I was giving myself a pep talk. I said, you're going to take over the leadership of that prison, and everything you've done heretofore is nothing in comparison to how you handle this next period of your life. I saw no hope. In fact, coming down my parachute, I said 5 years down there at least. And that was turned out to be wrong. It was nearly 8.
Jem Stockdale was quickly captured. He became the first prisoner of war from the Oriskany, shot down in an A-4 Skyhawk.
This program is brought to you in part by the Boeing Company.
We know why we're here. To redefine air travel for a new generation.
To ensure our forces are safer and stronger.
To take the world we share to tomorrow and beyond.
Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together to make a difference.
That's why we're here.
I was pretty nervous, apprehensive.
It was tough to tell them I was joining the Army at first. I did research on my own, tried to get an idea about what the Army was going to be like. It's given me a whole bunch of confidence.
But no, I'm very proud of him.
He's just a stronger, more driven individual.
He can outrun me.
If your son or daughter wants to talk about joining the Army, listen, you made them strong, we'll make them Army strong. Find out more at GoArmy.com.
Fact, you're receiving a structured settlement from a lawsuit. Fact, it's being paid out over years. Question, should you wait to get your money down the road? Or get a cash lump sum now? Call Peachtree Settlement Funding. Get cash for credit cards, medical bills, or a down payment on a house. No one has more expertise than Peachtree in turning your structured settlement into cash today. And that's a fact. Life doesn't wait. Why should you?
Call now, 1-800-903-1701.
You're watching the Military Channel. Go behind the lines.
On an all-new episode of Miami Ink.
We want to get every one of our Marlins fans tattooed.
It's like the stick-on tattoos.
Can you do it?
Yeah, we'll be down.
Ami and Nunez designed temporary tattoos for Marlins fans.
We'll make sure you have fun at the stadium.
And they throw out the first pitch.
If I could go out there and warm up for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it's still not going to help.
Will they strike out in front of 30,000 fans? An all-new Miami Ink. Tomorrow at 10 on TLC.
Two unbeaten champions.
Combinations by Mayweather. Big left by Hatton.
Floyd Mayweather has stopped everyone.
This is why we use the word sensation.
Ricky Hatton fears no one.
It's this combination. I think he's finished.
One will remain undefeated. Mayweather versus Hatton, Saturday, December 8th, live on Dish Network pay-per-view. Don't miss it. Live on Dish Network pay-per-view.
Over 1 billion movies delivered so far. 0 late fees. Netflix.
From the shadow of the Army,
we would own the skies in days.
a new power took flight.
We're going to have an Air Force, and we'll have the capability to do any job.
Now, the Military Channel is celebrating 60 years of Air Force might with a special night of Beyond the Wild Blue.
It was a big moment for us. We thought, boy, this is it. Now we're all on our own.
Air Force 60th Anniversary, Saturday, December 15th, beginning at 8, only on the Military Channel.
The A-4 Skyhawk is small, simple, and inexpensive. Fully loaded to 24,000 pounds, the Skyhawk weighs half what most Navy jets weigh. Designed in 1954, the Douglas Aircraft Company built the Skyhawk with landing gear tall enough to fit a single nuclear bomb under its belly. In Vietnam, the maneuverable Skyhawk gained fame as the sports car of attack planes. Capable of firing missiles or rockets, it most often dropped bombs, 2 tons of them every day of the Vietnam War. In 1965 and 66, the North Vietnamese began building much tougher defenses. Most formidably, radar-guided surface-to-air missiles, SAMs. Still, not until 1967 would the A-4 pilots from the Oriskany find out just how strong North Vietnamese defenses had become.
In '66, I think I saw a total of 3 SAMs. And those weren't even SAMs that were shooting at me. And I tell you, there's a difference. A SAM that you see and one that you see chasing you are 2 different SAMs.
In 1966, the Navy did begin to outfit the Oriskany's A-4s with radar detection equipment. Pilots would hear an alarm when a radar-guided missile was heading their way.
They crammed all the electronics in the belly of the airplane, and then they said, don't fire your 20-millimeter cannons, because if you do, you're likely to shake those electronics to pieces. So we were constrained in the use of our 20-millimeter cannon. We could use them in an emergency, but we were told, don't use it unless you have to.
In 1966, the Americans began picking up the pace of their attacks, with Skyhawks flying 300 miles round trip to strike Haiphong and the outskirts of Hanoi. But the flow of supplies south continued unabated. While on the line in 1966, the Oriskany launched and recovered groups of planes for 12 straight hours, from noon to midnight or midnight to noon. Rested for 12 hours while another carrier took over, then went back at it.
Stand by to recover aircraft.
We were undoubtedly operating an aircraft carrier like it had never been operated before.
The captain of the Oriskany was John Irubino.
After the 12 hours of flying is over, then the people still have to refuel the airplanes, repair them, rearm them again for the next day. And that takes a couple more hours, so that's 14 to 16 hours that these kids are working.
In October of 1966, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara visited the Oriskany.
His first question to me was, what is the strike pilot ratio? I told him we had a certain number of pilots on board, we had a certain number of missions, and in order to fly those missions, we had to use the pilots more than 1.5 times a day. And I don't think he was really worried about the pilots being overworked. He was worried more about his numbers than anything else.
Missions flown, ordnance dropped. These were the measurements of success in the air war over Vietnam. The pilots of the Oriskany were now dropping 300,000 pounds of bombs every day on North Vietnam.
I had the feeling towards when we got on the line that it was more important to measure how much ordnance went over the bow than how effective that ordnance was. That was very disturbing. We were under intense, continuing, press on and on operations. And part of that whole pressure is the reason in my mind that we had a fire.
Two weeks after McNamara's visit, disaster struck. At 7 a.m. on October 26th, an inexperienced sailor stacking magnesium flares in a locker accidentally triggered one. The flare began to burn, and the sailor panicked, threw the burning flare into the locker, and slammed the door.
Ideally, of course, if he could have, he should have taken the thing out and thrown it over the side. But I believe he was scared, and I believe that most people would have been.
The flare ignited more than 600 other flares in the locker, sent a fireball rolling across the ceiling of the hangar deck. Scorching several A-4 Skyhawks and igniting 2 helicopters.
The biggest enemy of a ship at sea is fire, And you don't have a fire of that magnitude without somebody getting hurt.
Toxic smoke and heat poured through the ship's ventilation system and into the officers' quarters where A4 pilot Dave Carey was sleeping.
I remember hearing the fire alarm, waking up, and I opened the door to my stateroom. And it was like it was like walking into a bag of flour. The whole passageway was white.
Paul Engel led a number of junior officers to safety.
We managed to get out of there and get up the hangar deck, and then we started loading bombs, picking them up, manhandling them. There were people picking up 1,000-pound bombs, 4 or 5 guys running in, picking them up and throwing them over the side. We could have lost the ship easily with that fire raging.
Paul Engel then joined one of the search parties, going through every space in the forward part of the ship where officers slept. 3 hours after the fire began, Dave Carey was found in the ship's administration office.
I remember walking forward and the guys from the squadron seeing me, and they come running, there you are, and they were delighted to see me, but I didn't realize, why. Because they knew about all these people that were missing, and they're bringing up bodies, and there, but for the grace of God, went I.
It took 4 hours to put the fire out. 44 men were dead, 8 sailors and 36 officers, including 24 pilots.
Most of them died of asphyxiation. There were 2 or 3 that died from burns. He was my air operations officer. It was a very, very difficult ceremony to go through. It was his wish that he be buried at sea. All the others were sent home.
Come in! Come in! Come in!
When a rebuilt Oriskany returned to the Tonkin Gulf in July of 1967, its sailors would stand mortified and watch as an eerily similar disaster consumed the USS Forrestal. As a morning launch was getting ready to go, a rocket in an F-4 Phantom fired inadvertently and hit the fuel tank directly beneath the seat in the A4 where John McCain was sitting.
There was a huge fire. I shut down the airplane and went out on the refueling probe and rolled through the fire that was already there on the flight deck and ran across the other end of the flight deck. I turned and looked towards the airplanes where the fire was at that time, and I started back, and as I did, the first bomb cooked off and exploded.
The worst disaster aboard a Navy ship since World War II. 134 men died. 62 planes were damaged or destroyed. With the Forrestal out of commission, John McCain elected to join the Saints, an A4 attack squadron on the USS Oriskany.
We have 4 distinct seasons. We ought to have 4 distinct seasonal beers. We have white ale, summer ale, Oktoberfest. When it gets cold, you need Samuel Adams Winter Lager.
The Winter Lager is a wheat bock
with some holiday spices.
Winter Lager is spiced with orange peel, ginger, and cinnamon.
Full-bodied,
malty, delicious.
Nice hearty beer to enjoy with your friends on a cold night.
Anytime when you're surrounded by snow and fun, it's a good time to have a Sam Adams Winter Lager.
Going over and over? It's not just you. Stopping and starting? Going urgently? You're not alone. Lots of guys experience male urinary symptoms due to BPH, also known as an enlarged prostate. But for many guys, prescription Flomax may relieve urinary symptoms due to BPH in 1 week. And who doesn't want to spend less time in the bathroom? Only your doctor can tell if you have BPH, not prostate cancer. Common side effects of Flomax are runny nose, dizziness, and decrease in semen. Upon standing, a sudden drop in blood pressure may occur, rarely resulting in fainting. So when starting Flomax, avoid situations where injury could result. If considering cataract surgery, tell your eye surgeon you've taken Flomax. Do what millions of guys have already done. Ask your doctor about Flomax and call 877-4FLOMAX for a free 1-week trial. Why wait? Join the crowd. Flomax could make a difference in 1 week.
A J.G. Wentworth success story.
Well, I had a nasty car accident, and following my lawsuit, I ended up receiving a structured settlement.
Frank had a long payout with a small check each month.
Well, it wasn't long before bills started to pile up. Credit cards, electric, card payments.
Frank turned to J.G. Wentworth.
They helped me.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call 866-448-7202. 866-448-7202.
If you're looking for some high-performance, incredibly durable, good-looking boots, don't screw around. Go to Lugs.com and check out the entire line of Lugs boots.
And remember, all Lugs boots are designed with the same features as our bikes. High performance, super comfortable, good-looking, incredibly durable.
So for the work boots that work, do what I do and go to Lugs.com. Lugs, the work boots that work.
Mars is the kind of challenge that we need. We desperately need.
It is an amazingly complex undertaking.
You don't send robots out to find fossils.
Today's scientists are experimenting with everything from rocket design to how to protect astronauts from cosmic radiation and where to look for alien life. Mars Rising, a special 6-part series, tomorrow at 9.
In July of 1967, when the repaired Oriskany returned to its battle station, its attack pilots found themselves flying against Alpha List targets in Hanoi and the port city of Haiphong for the first time in the war.
So we were doing that 3 times a day, going into very heavily defended areas that was really beyond the experience base of the guys that had been on the cruise the year before.
Jim Busey joined the Saints, one of the Oriskany's attack squadrons, in 1967.
60 to 70% of the squadron, 24 pilots in the squadron, did not have combat experience. In other words, we hadn't been shot at before. So in a case like that, the only way you gain experience is on the job.
In the summer of '67, there were missiles in the air all the time. And lots of flak. It looked like something out of a World War II movie with the little black puffs around everywhere. We were losing airplanes right and left. At least in my recollection, we were just losing airplanes like crazy.
I'm directly over you. I have the man in the parachute in sight. Is that your chief at 9 o'clock? 5-3, we're about there. Roger.
In just its first week on the line, the Oriskany lost 5 out of 30 Skyhawks to combat from both the Saints and its sister squadron, the Ghost Riders.
Okay, Clown, let's rock 506. Let's just cut him. I'm coming in to help.
Rescue crews picked up 4 of the 5 pilots. The other was captured. Brian Compton led the Saints.
When you lose 5 in a week and you say, well, you're going to be over here for 26 weeks, you realize that you had just turned over the air wing before you got through. Our arithmetic wasn't as fancy as McNamara's, but it was that good. And we knew it was a different ball game.
By the end of August, the Saints and the Ghost Riders had lost another 5 planes. 6 Skyhawk pilots were gone.
I saw a very almost macabre kind of an attitude. We were out doing what we thought was right, led, of course, by Brian Compton, who was...
John McCain, now a U.S. Senator from Arizona, joined the Saints as a replacement pilot in October of 1967.
And yet, behind the bravado and the macho kind of attitude, I did see a great sadness when we would lose a pilot, but when it happened, I think it gave us renewed vigor and renewed our efforts to do as much damage. One of the things we used to say, if we destroy this target, then we won't have to go back.
I don't think we really changed tactics. In other words, we didn't back off. We had some ground rules. In other words, we would not go below 3,000 feet ordinarily. The ground rules, they're not laws. We would not make a second run on a target, ground rules, not laws.
'67 brought more action in Alpha strikes. It also brought a new weapon into the war, the first TV-guided smart bomb, the Walleye. The pilot locked a camera in the nose of the Walleye on the target. The bomb then followed its line of sight to detonation.
As soon as you've released it, you can get out of there. It likes maximum contrast, so if it's a white building window, and the windows looks dark, it will go for that point of contrast. And they're very good, they do it.
When the Saints arrived in the Tonkin Gulf, they requested to use the Walleye to take out the Hanoi thermal power plant, located near a circular peninsula on a lake in downtown Hanoi. A very heavily defended target, very high up on the A-list.
We don't want to kill innocent civilian people if we can avoid it. And obviously, if you're going to drop some bombs on a power plant in the middle of town, there's a fair probability that some civilian casualties will occur. And so there's an effort made to try and prevent that. One of them is don't go there.
I think they probably had a little spillage concern, but our concern was on the target. There were no registered Alabama voters there that I knew of.
3 weeks later, approval finally came through. Using the highly accurate Walleye, the Saints chose to strike with just 6 A-4s with F-8 Crusaders for fighter cover. The Air Force ran a diversionary strike against a MiG base northeast of Hanoi. Leaving their Crusaders outside to watch for MiGs, the Saints approached the city alone. At 10,000 feet, they fanned out, descending at 450 miles an hour. They glided in at a 15-degree angle, all at once, from different points on the compass. They found the power plant shrouded in smoke. From smoke pots the North Vietnamese placed around the plant to fool the Walleye. Busey flew in from the north amid fierce anti-aircraft fire, and the first of 28 surface-to-air missiles.
I remember being head down in the cockpit on the Sony scope to get the weapon locked on my window, the window that was assigned to me on the power plant. And just as I locked on, the airplane was thrown off of that lock. And instead of looking at the thermal power plant, I was looking at the Paul Doumer Bridge, which was the main bridge across the river in downtown Hanoi. And I was upside down.
Hardly missing a beat, Jim Busey righted his airplane, relocked the walleye on the power plant, and let it go. He looked up to see two surface-to-air missiles.
Then I looked out the right wing and saw that it was on fire, that I'd had some anti-aircraft fire going through the wing.
Dodging the missiles, Busey escaped to a higher altitude, where thinner air doused the flames engulfing his wing. When he landed back on the Oriskany, he counted 127 holes in his airplane, a testament to the survivability of his tiny Skyhawk.
But other than that, it really was a nice flight. We didn't lose an airplane, so that was a big plus.
5 of the 6 walleyes, including Jim Busey's, hit the target, knocking out power to downtown Hanoi. Brian Compton led the strike.
They didn't put out any lights that night. We were talking to the registered voters of Hanoi.
Brian Compton received the Navy Cross, the Navy's highest honor. Jim Busey also was awarded a Navy Cross.
Brian's approach was from the south, and after he released his weapon, he flew on over the power plant and circled it at least twice, taking pictures before he headed on out.
In all, Brian Compton took 17 photos of the bomb damage to the Hanoi power plant.
Yeah, it's kind of against the rules, but, you know, what are you going to do? Send him back to Hanoi? He's already been there.
To the members of his squadron, indeed to all of the members of the Air Wing, Brian Compton was developing a reputation as invulnerable.
I have very vivid memories of a flight that I was on with Brian Compton when I was the number 3 person, and the number 2 person was shot down and crashed inside of Haiphong. And Brian Compton was concerned about trying to find out whether the pilot survived or not, and so he kept circling around the city of Haiphong at a very low altitude, around 2,000 feet. They were firing everything. Missiles, anti-aircraft guns, I'm sure rifles. Everything was being fired at us, and he kept circling around, and we'd go
John is exaggerating. He said I took him over Haiphong 7 times.
And then I'd see him turn back in, and I'd gulp, and we'd go back in. He must have made 8 or 9 trips.
You can't but trust these politicians, honey. They'll lie to you every time.
You can feel the emotion of movies the way filmmakers intend for you to experience it, but only if you have accurate and dramatic sound. For the full experience like you feel at the movie theater, you need lifelike surround sound. Presenting the Lifestyle 48 DVD home entertainment system, one of the new premium home theater solutions from Bose. The original has been called Home Entertainment Perfection, and now unique Bose technologies take it to the next level. Room size, shape, and furnishings can significantly affect the sound from any system. The Bose Adapt IQ system addresses this problem to bring lifelike sound to any room. From tiny jewel cube speakers that blend easily into your decor, And the Hideaway Acoustimass module delivers deep, rich sound that brings your movies to life in vivid detail.
The Bose system's like going to a movie theater.
You're going to hear everything no matter what volume it's at.
You can just close your eyes and feel like you're right there.
Lifestyle systems also let you enjoy your music with the same high-quality sound. You can expand them to easily enjoy music around your home, even outdoors. The Lifestyle 48 system stores music from your CDs, and its U-Music system lets you enjoy music in a whole new way.
The sound quality is just exceptional. And you don't even notice the speakers. They just kind of melt into the decor of the room.
It makes it feel like you're at the game.
To enjoy the full emotional impact of sports, music, and movies, we invite you to hear the difference Bose technology makes. Call for a free information kit to learn about our selection of premium lifestyle home theater systems and the unique benefits of the new Lifestyle V30 system. Order the Lifestyle 48 system today and you'll receive the renowned Bose Wave Radio free. Lifestyle home theater systems, only from Bose, the most respected name in sound.
At J.G. Wentworth, we say get cash now for your structured settlement.
J.G. Wentworth? Cash now?
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
J.G. Wentworth is right. It's my money and I need it now.
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 If you have a structured settlement and you need cash now, J.G. Wentworth can help. We'll buy all or part of your structured settlement for a lump sum cash amount, so you can pay bills that have piled up as a result of an injury or an inability to work. Call J.G. Wentworth now and speak to one of our structured settlement specialists. You'll get a no-cost appraisal and have all of your questions answered. The call is free and there's no obligation.
It's my money and I need it now. It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call 866-591-3199. 866-591-3199.
What started as an ordinary Sunday
December the 7th, like any other morning, Mom making breakfast,
became the day that will live in infamy.
We are a moment of history that changed the course of the world.
Through eyewitness accounts.
We were awakened by a crash landing. The smoke and flames must have gone 500-600 feet in the air. You darn right, it was scary. I mean, it was awesome.
We uncover the secrets of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor Day, Friday beginning at 6 p.m., only on the Military Channel.
The Saints of the Oriskany had many successes that summer and fall of 1967. They blew all the major bridges around Haiphong, temporarily isolating the port city from the rest of the country. Days after the power plant strike, Brian Compton was leading a mission against a Haiphong railroad bridge when the SAM alarm sounded in his cockpit.
If I see that missile, I'm convinced that I can outmaneuver that missile. And when you got to the right time, you know, you maneuvered violently. I generally prefer to go up, but you can make the movement in any direction. And basically, if you did it at the right time, you could outmaneuver the SAM. In other words, the SAM could not pull enough G's to track you through that maneuver. If you screwed up, you got tagged.
On this fateful day, a missile headed straight for Brian Compton's flight of 4 planes.
Brian did what we called a pitch up to the right, away from the rest of us. And Dave Carey and Al Stafford were with him, but the SAM came up and caught them. It went right, it detonated right between them, and blew them both out of the sky.
I remember there being a huge explosion. My airplane just stayed on its back and it started spinning and tumbling and gyrating. It was shaking so bad that nothing would focus. And I tried to look inside at the panel to see what was going on. The instrument panel was just a blur in the cockpit.
About the time that I was about to yell, eject, a chute came out.
All of a sudden, everything was very quiet, except I could hear airplanes, I could hear guns, I could hear anti-aircraft fire, I could hear a lot of shooting, and I'm hanging in a parachute, looked down, and I landed in the middle of a small North Vietnamese village.
He came up on the radio, and it was a little handheld emergency radio, and I asked him if he was all right.
And he said, "You know, we cannot come and get you." At which point I couldn't think of anything clever to say anymore, and Dean said,
there was no way I could bring a helo in to try and extract him. And besides which, he was surrounded by people, so if we'd have tried to fish him out, they'd have shot him anyway. So I told him, well, there's nothing I can do, Dave. I'll see you.
And he flew away. And I stood out there in the middle of that rice paddy. It was like I was the only person in the entire world, universe. I was by myself, alone, out there. And that started what would turn out for me to be a little longer than 5.5 years in prison in North Vietnam.
Emerging from the shadow of the Army,
we would own the skies in days.
a new power took flight.
We're going to have an Air Force, and we'll have the capability to do any job.
Now, the Military Channel is celebrating 60 years of Air Force might with a special night of Beyond the Wild Blue.
It was a big moment for us. We thought, boy, this is it. Now we're all on our own.
Air Force 60th Anniversary, Saturday, December 15th, beginning at 8, only on the Military Channel.
Tomorrow on Weaponology, the Waffen-SS. Originally Hitler's bodyguards. In combat, they were ruthless.
Waffen-SS were extremely loyal, fierce fighters.
Wielding technology years ahead of its time.
This weapon was the way to generate lots and lots of firepower.
And a massive monster of the battlefield.
Tons and tons of metal come storming through a position. People are terrified of them.
The Waffen-SS on Weaponology. Premiering tomorrow at 10 on the Military Channel.
Millions of Americans with Medicare have been waiting for affordable coverage.
I waited 3 years for her to marry me.
I said no twice.
The third time was a charm. You wait long enough and good things happen.
The wait is over. Now with Humana Gold Choice, you get an all-in-one Medicare health plan that includes prescription drug coverage. Call for this free book. There's no obligation. You'll learn all about this new Humana plan that can save you money in so many ways. Call 1-800-304-4690. This plan is unlike anything you may have seen before. It lets you choose any doctor that accepts the plan's payment terms and conditions. It covers many preventive services, and it even includes a fitness program membership.
One night he sang outside my window until I made him stop.
If this plan sounds like it might be right for you, then call right now for the free book so you can really compare Humana Gold Choice to your current coverage. Humana is one of the largest health insurers in the nation, helping people stay healthy for over 40 years. Humana Gold Choice gives you benefits beyond original Medicare with predictable copayments, such as $15 for doctor visits or just $30 for a specialist. And this all-in-one plan includes prescription drug coverage.
You've never seen a man so patient.
The wait for affordable coverage is over. There's no obligation, so call Humana now for this free book, 1-800-304-4690. It explains all the details about this money-saving plan.
This book showed us how Humana can help.
And some things are just worth waiting for.
Call now, 1-800-304-4690. That's 1-800-304-4690.
From the moment a crime is committed, a race begins.
You only have one shot to get that evidence. You miss it, it's probably gone forever.
Every clue is crucial, every instinct important.
It tied him directly to the crime scene.
Every decision life-changing.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces are there.
Because for those who break the law, time never stops running. Life of a Crime. Thursdays at 8 on the Discovery Times channel.
Hey, guys.
What's up, bro?
Checking your credit report once won't do much either. Go to today.truecredit.com and get unlimited access to your credit report and credit score. True Credit. Manage your credit, manage your life. If you're not checking your credit regularly, you could be throwing away hundreds, even thousands. Log on to today.truecredit.com now and get your 3-bureau credit report and free credit score. And clean up your act. True Credit. Manage your credit, manage your life.
How would you like to run a business of your own from the comfort of your own home? It's not as crazy as it sounds.
I made over $100,000 a year from my home.
I just made a down payment for our vacation home, working part-time.
Yeah, you have to be crazy to visit this website and find out how to start your home business. Crazy like a fox. Log on and get your success kit.
I made $5,000 yesterday.
Crazy? I don't think so. Log on now.
Running very low on pilots and planes, the Saints cast about for volunteers.
Overall flow today, as we've done.
John McCain, on the Forrestal when fire consumed that ship, signed up. On October 26, 1967, less than a month after he arrived on the Oriskany, John McCain volunteered for a strike on the now repaired Hanoi thermal power plant, the same destination as the Saints' award-winning mission of August.
He did want to go on that strike, and since I was the ops officer and wrote the flight schedule, he did come to me and insist on going on that flight, so I stuck him in there as a wingman. My nickname for him was Gregory Green Ass, because he was a new boy, hadn't been in combat before.
Most of us felt, as I did, that it was very, very unlikely that I'd be shot down. As I released the bombs, I had just started to pull back on the stick when the surface-to-air missile struck the right wing, and it gyrated very violently straight down, and I ejected, and according to reports, my chute opened just as my feet touched the lake.
Unconscious, John McCain landed in a lake in the center of the city in the middle of the day.
And so when I hit the water, it woke me up, and I went down to the bottom, and I couldn't get up to the surface. I tried to use my arms, and I couldn't, and I reached down with my teeth and was able to get my teeth around the toggle and pull it and inflate the life vest. Came to the surface, and there were Vietnamese swimming out.
McCain broke both his arms and his knee, ejecting from his A-4 Skyhook. The mob that pulled him from the lake stabbed him and broke his shoulder. He was taken to the infamous Hanoi Hilton, where Jim Stockdale had spent the last 2 years.
He was probably more beat up when he got to prison than anybody that ever lived through a rough ride and a rough treatment after he got picked up.
McCain was the 16th pilot from the Oriskany killed or captured since July. By the end of their 1967 deployment to Vietnam, 1 out of 3 members of the Saints had died in combat or been captured. Of their 15 original planes, not 1 remained. In the 3 years of Operation Rolling Thunder, the Oriskany had lost 38 pilots and 60 planes, including 29 Skyhawks, to combat, the highest loss rate of any carrier in the war. In the fall of 1967, the Navy sent a safety team to investigate the tactics of the pilots.
They were very quick to see that what we were doing in the summer and fall of 1967 was significantly different than what had been done before. It didn't have anything to do with tactics or equipment or new weapons on the part of the enemy. It was just the fact that probability and statistics were hitting us.
But the one thing we didn't do, we didn't back off. And maybe that was wrong. Maybe my leadership was defective because I had not given people I didn't offer that as an option. You know, the option was we came to fight, and that's what I expect you to do.
Yeah, he was aggressive. Yeah, he went in and did the job that we had trained for. But so did the sister squadron, their CO and their XO. And I don't think there was any pattern there, so I can't give you an answer. I don't know why it turned out that way. It just did.
When the bombardment failed to deter the North Vietnamese, President Johnson ended Operation Rolling Thunder in 1968. Five years later, in 1973, John McCain, Dave Carey, and Jim Stockdale came home. Jim Stockdale was awarded the Medal of Honor. During his 8 years in prison in Hanoi, he led American prisoners of war in near unanimous defiance of their brutal captors. In 1993, the remains of the last Oriskany pilot and the last saint to die in Operation Rolling Thunder came home. 24-year-old Ralph Folks was an A-4 Skyhawk pilot killed on a routine road reconnaissance mission over North Vietnam on January 5th, 1968.
And I tell you here today that I stand before the company of heroes and future heroes in our Navy and our Marine Corps. May you always fly a center ball. May you never forget to drop your hook.
The men who lead the Navy today were the youngest officers in Vietnam. The last of a generation torn apart by war, now teaching the lessons of that conflict to the first generation born too late to remember it.
Don't worry, I'm a naval aviator.